Hi there. George R. R. Martin just made a new blog post today updating our information on the status of some of the other potential Game of Thrones spin-offs that are in development, particularly the animated projects. And I guess he did it today because it's New Year's Eve, an end-of-year in review kind of thing, but the biggest news from this is he made the revelation that the potential Voyages of Young Corlys Velaryon the Sea Snake show has officially been recategorized from a live-action pitch to an animated pitch. This is entirely for budgetary reasons, and he fully understands and says he actually supports this. And I myself, when they announced this and just thinking on how it would fit and what shows could get greenlit, I thought this will be extremely expensive, even compared to the Nymeria one, because the Nymeria one is a larger scale, but she doesn't visit quite as many places. She goes to Sothorios, to Summer Isles, and then Dorne, versus 9 separate voyages. I mean, Corlys goes to Yiti, which is their version of China, but then there's another one where he visits the poles and is fighting cannibals on derelict ships and things. The whole point is he visits everywhere. How would they physically fit this in a budget or something? So that was shifted to be an animated pitch. Now, it's not that it was canceled or shelved. I'm not sure. That's a big question. Are the same writers still attached? Are they reusing the scripts by Bruno Heller, who's a big writer from HBO's Rome? And I treat animation as a serious art medium. There are serious animated works out there. Like, how easy would it be to reuse the scripts or adapt them? I'm not really sure. But Martin, in his own words, gives an update on that and some of the other ones. Now, if you haven't been following this, I just made this big update when Martin was talking about all the other spin-offs that are in development. That's probably out of date for him. He probably got this news just now. But about 6 weeks ago, when he said there's 8 other things in development, and people wondered, well, how many of these are animated? Well, like half of them are animated. We heard they're up to 4. Number that stuck in people's heads for a while, because it was what we heard in 2021, was there's 3 animated projects, one of which is Yiti, their China, and we don't know what the other 2 are. Then we heard a leak summer 2022, right before House of the Dragon came out, in that big article by THR, that we've actually heard there's up to 4 animated projects. Well, in this, Martin himself confirms at one point there were 4 animated projects. 2 got shelved, but then we added in Corlys, so now there's a total of 3 potential animated projects. Martin makes this clear, it's not an overcount. It's not, oh, Corlys is the 4th animated thing. It is technically the 5th thing that has been pitched as an animated idea, because whatever ideas 3 and 4 were got shelved. And we have no way of knowing if one of those 2 things that got shelved was, in fact, the Yeti thing. I doubt it, because it sounded like the most developed one, because it's the only one they were willing to talk about. Martin said he saw a lot of concept art for it and stuff. But here's what he says. He starts off the post by talking about how much he really liked Blue Eye Samurai. He's very feudal, so obviously it appeals to Song of Ice and Fire. But segueing from that, he goes, as it happens, HBO and I have our own potential animated projects set in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. He's talked about this before. He said, no, they're really high-quality animation. They're comparable to Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots in terms of the quality of it. None of these has been greenlit yet. All of these are just pitches. But I think we are getting close to taking the next step with a couple of them. When this last round of development started a few years back, we had 4 ideas for animated shows with some great talents attached. Writers' rooms and summits, outline and scripts followed in due course, but alas, 2 of the original projects were subsequently shelved. Those of you who have read my reports in years past, have heard that I like saying shelved instead of killed, because they always come back to them, you never know. But work on the other 2 animated projects continues apace. And meanwhile, we have moved, 9 voyages. He already said they renamed it the Sea Snake. But the Young Corlys show, about our series about the legendary voyages of the Sea Snake, has been moved over from live action to animation. A move I support fully. Budgetary constraints would likely have made a live action version prohibitively expensive. What with half the show taking place at sea, and the necessity of creating a different port every week. Literally every episode would be a different place, from Driftmark to Lys to the Basilisk Isles to Volantis to Karth. And you compare that to, that's a big question after this, what's going to come with Nymeria? It doesn't visit quite as many places, but Volantis, Karth, on and on. There's a whole world out there, and we have a lot better chance of showing it all with animation. So we now have 3 animated projects underway. And he doesn't specify if the Yee one is one of the 2 originals that survived. And he does stress, it's possible none of them get greenlit because they don't like any of them. They don't have a quota of we need at least one. If they're all really bad ideas, they're not just going to crank it out and dilute the brand name. So as I said, I'm just left wondering, Nymeria would start with the war where the Valyrians conquer the Rhoynar with an army of 300 dragons in a single battle. Like, would they have the budget to do that just as the pilot? But the scale of the battles is bigger, but in terms of sets you need to build, not a lot of it is actually at sea versus, sea voyages of Corlys. A lot of it is Rhoynar camp on a beach, which is modular, that you can redress a beach set to be technically this is a different desolate island in the Basilisk Isles or Sothorios, because it's just a camp. Like the camp set they reused in the Sept Zones could easily stand in for, well, this is the Basilisk Isles, it's a desert island. I don't think you'd need to build as many sets, but you'd have more people in the sets in Nymeria. This does raise the question of, is Nymeria being reconsidered to be animated? I'm leaning towards no, because I think if they were going to do that, they would have announced that the same time they shifted Corlys to be animated. And Martin doesn't mention that. That if it was going to happen, I think he'd tell us right now. And the other thing is, they really want a live-action Nymeria show. It is the one show that has survived through the multiple different pitch phases. That there was wave 1 of all the pitches under the old HBO before AT&T bought them. Back in 2017, we eventually found out that, well, we knew that the first 3 out of 5 pitches were Long Night, Dance of the Dragons, Doom of Valyria from a leak, and we could figure that the 4th one was Targaryen Conquest. It was, but what was the 5th idea? And only in that THR article right before House of the Dragon came out, I've talked about this on my channel, they revealed first round of pitches in 2017, we pitched Nymeria under Brian Helgeland, who's a pretty big writer. And then they started over from scratch maybe, but then in the second wave of pitches under Warner Discovery, back in early 2021, we found out that the ones they're pitching now are Duncan Egg, Young Corlys, and Nymeria, those 3. Now under Amanda Siegel. I don't know if she's still attached or not, it's been a while, but they seemed really determined, more so than Young Corlys, to seed the ground for a potential prequel about Nymeria. They so prominently set up Nymeria in Season 1 of House of the Dragon when they're reading a history book about her, that I think, and it's not just the Nymeria show, it's also Valyria at the height of its power. This is like Rome destroying Carthage, there's no one left. This is when Valyria wiped out its last rival. You would see Targaryens in this as a cameo. I think they'd be, I've said this before, I think because we know the Targaryens are a younger family among the Dragon Lords, that they're relative newbies, that like the common general who's not a Dragon Lord, who is bravely the first over the wall at the fall of Croyane, the Dragon Lord will go, you've performed so admirably, here's a Dragon Egg, I elevate you to Dragon Lord status, General Targaryen, and that you would see the start of it. But that's a speculation on my part, but you'd see Valyrians in it, you'd see dragons in it. It's not just a Nymeria prequel. Whereas the Corlys thing might work better as animated because they visit so many more places. I mean, you go to Yee, which is their fantasy version of China. You'd have him fighting derelict ships in the polar caps that are frozen in with feral cannibals in them. That would be great because, like a lot of sci-fi movies are like that. They'd be doing a lot of cool stuff, and I'd like to see it animated. But how would you build all of this on a budget for what's really a secondary show compared to the flagship House of the Dragon? So that is the question. How does this affect Nymeria? And I settle on, they don't visit as many places in that, even though the scale of the battles is bigger. They've been much more heavily seeding, we want to do a Nymeria show, and for longer. And if they were going to demote both of them to animation, they would have done it at the same time. And I don't see animation as demotion. I think they can do more in this rather than limiting us to, well, the dragons are off screen to save on CGI money. And this is one of the big creature features. You know, he's going to be going all around the world to the other continents where there's literally dinosaurs, where there's lobsters the size of horses, where there's horses the size of elephants. I made that last one up, but there really are. Like, in the show, there's a point you see a clamshell the size of... In the back of the Hall of Nine, there's like a clamshell the size of a wagon wheel, and it's like, that's not artwork. That's he went to the Shivering Sea where there's giant monsters and stuff. The sea monsters and other stuff in the other continents. We don't have a list of every voyage. So Martin himself was fully on board with this and says it's for budget reasons. There's too many things we need. By name, he says Driftmark, Lys, Basilisk Isles, Volantis, Karth. That's too many new sets to build. Do worry how this affects Nymeria. Like, I would watch whether this was animated or not, because I don't see that as somehow lesser. I know other people might. Why do people always gotta hate on animation? The whole thing of, oh, who's your favorite Spider-Man? Oh, you don't count Miles Morales just because it's animation. I think it's nice. It's just I like the original cartoon, but whatever. Point is, this is a bit of a shift, and it's not just the Corlys news. Also, that of those 4 animated projects, we're down to 2. 3 if you count Corlys. Is the Yeetie one of those other ones? In which case, I think the other one would be Summer Isles. But then again, we didn't get a new set of Histories and Lore motion comics. I always thought one of the animated projects is an anthology series, like a supersized Histories and Lore in the style of Love, Death, and Robots. Narratively, it's an anthology. I'd really like to see that as, an anthology like the Histories and Lore explaining this is background stuff for the current season as a tie-in. Now I don't know what to think. And of course, this throws our whole schedule into chaos. I'll make a follow-up video to this about how this affects what we know of the upcoming things that are in active development. But a lot of questions here. Is Bruno Heller's writing still going to be used in it? Is Nymeria potentially going to be turned into animation? But we knew there were only so many slots open, so please like and subscribe. I'm going to have follow-up videos going over this in more detail.